talking about earlier was UKip, wasn't it? I missed that conversation, so you can fill me in.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking about the elections obviously happened yesterday. Well, the vote was in yesterday, and it was so shocking how many UKip supporters were out there. Uh, they have taken a lot of seats, and I think we were talking about that before about how this sort of change in voters and so forth has happened. So I mean, people are they want change and they want to see something else happen, but I think it's just going down the wrong way and going towards UKIP, which are inherently racist.
Yeah, and fast and disablist.
Yeah, and you know the list can go on. I mean, they hate anybody that's not British or white, really.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's shocking that so many people are voting for them.
I don't think they realise how big an impact it's going to have on the UK if it does continue.
You see, I mean, go on.
Also with UKIP, it's the euro, isn't it? The big, should we be in it or should we not be in it? And a lot of people are against Europe, but do we actually, any of us, know enough to make a decision? Have we been given enough facts to make an educated decision we should be on in the EU or not?
Well, I think, I mean, the majority of us don't have I mean, I personally don't know enough about the European Union to even be comfortable of making a decision if we should stay or leave. To me, it seems like, I mean, those are the closest countries to us, and I mean, if you look at the European Union, what is it? It's an amalgamation of countries. We're getting together. We're saying goodbye to borders. There is, you know, less border control, and people can travel supposedly wherever they want. So surely, I mean, that is something that we want to push for rather than isolate ourselves in this. I mean, we're an island. We're not the great powerhouse that we used to be. I think UKIP are still thinking of Britain as that industrial power that used to be back in the 1900s.
Yeah.
We're not like that anymore.
No, and I'm sure that it's something to do with human rights as well, that we lose a lot of human rights if we do leave.
God, yeah. God, yeah. I mean,
you know, like the overtime hours and things like that, aren't they all European laws? You know, that's where I think we're all quite political, but, you know, I'll hold my hands up. I don't know enough about Europe to make an educated choice on it. I'd have to learn for a referendum, a lot. And a little leaflet through the post isn't really going to do it.
No, not at all. And I mean, I think we also got to remember, I think human rights is a massive issue because, I mean, if you're, for example, deemed a terrorist in this country, you don't have the right to a fair trial. And, you know, you can be jailed for years upon years at a time with absolutely nobody knowing you're there. So, and it seems that only the European Union that, you know, some human rights, you can say, are overzealous or whatever. But, I mean, if it wasn't for the European Union, where would Britain be, honestly? I mean, where would forget about the economics. I mean, yes, the European costs will actually cost about 0.7% of our budget. But apart from that small amount of money that it costs us, it gives us, I think, a lot in political terms that we just don't, I think, comprehend because we're just not told about it. The media reports the way it wants.
I would say that's the reason why, and what we've realised, we've spent so much energy fighting the small government that we've got, we've totally missed the big facts. But then I find that with the TTIP, with the Trans-Pacific Partnership kind of thing, that we're missing the big ones. The big ones that are going through are the ones that are going to have such a dramatic change. And also we've got in July we've got we've got kind of the dollar running to hit a brick wall as well, which is going to cause a massive crash. Is UKIP really ready for this? Because do they realize what kind of era we're sort of stepping into?
I mean, I think I would be. I mean, the thing about the European elections is that, again, you know, they're not in the Houses of Parliament, you know, so they're not going to have a direct impact on British legislation anyway. What they will do is just make Britain look terribly on the European stage, because, I mean, we had that clown, you know, Nick Griffin representing us up until he went bankrupt. And now we've got a load of MEPs that are UKIPs that all they're going to do is vote no and then claim the highest amount of expenses possible.
Yeah.
They're not even going to look if the policies could potentially be good for Britain or good for the people here. all they're going to do is vote no on everything, and of course, as most politicians do, claim as much as possible, take as much money as they possibly can, and retire early. So why people think that UKip are going to solve Britain's problems?
I think that UKip as well seem to be more on the standstill, not getting involved side as well than the others. They're possibly one of the worst ones. That they've already admitted that they plan it can run itself. So, yeah. I can't wait to see this.
Concern is in the general election, you know, if we end up, I don't think it's going to be a sure win and for anyone. It's going to be a close run race. And if we end up with a UKip Tory coalition, I think that's just, I don't know, might as well throw me hands in.
Yeah. Yeah.
We may have to pack our bags and relocate.
I'm off to Scotland. See you later, guys.
I'm off to Italy. Well, then again, we're not too good ourselves. But I mean, it's not a joke of a country. But I mean, what seems quite fun. I don't think UKip are going to get anywhere in the general election simply because our voting system is incredibly unfair to smaller parties anyway. Yeah. I mean, the European Parliament, the reason why they could get in is because the political system was fair. So everyone's vote is counted. But in the political system we have in Britain, they're just going to get decimated because their votes won't count. And I think because, to me, I mean, if the next election is when it happens, I think it's going to be either a Conservative majority or a Lib Dem Conservative coalition.
Yeah. Yeah, but either way, it doesn't matter which way we go on this. Britain isn't fixing itself. And we have to find a way of finding a fair system. And when you think about it, if we were to bring sort of like Liberal Democrats back, is that really fair on the students? You know, we can't. With each one, the damage they've done, none of them are actually forgivable at the minute because they rectified the damage they've done.
Any party have done it any different? No. It doesn't really seem to matter who we vote for. The outcome to us is always the same, whether it be through education, through healthcare, or what.
If it's UKip, because they're more right wing. I think that's the only worry possibly.
I mean, the thing about I would say about, for example, if you take the example of the Lib Dem, I think yes, every other party would have done it, but you don't sign a pledge saying that you're going to do something, the one thing you are definitely going to do, and then make your whole campaign about that one thing that you're going to do, and then do the exact opposite as soon as you get a taste of power. That's, I think, what pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah, I think an anchorman in America today absolutely going ballistic, and he was like along them lines. When is somebody going to stand up? The politicians can see the corruption. When is one of them going to be brave enough and say they're not going to be party to, you know, the corruption and the cover up for the bank?
Yeah. Did you see what happened to Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy? I think I would.
This anchorman, and this, there is not one. Well, maybe George Galloway is probably the only person that I've heard really talk about this sort of thing, and he's not taking that seriously. You know, when is somebody in power going to be honest and stand up and say, look, that this system is broken, because it is broken, and they want to fix something, and all ages come to an end. You know, we have to move on.
I mean, I think the problem is that one person isn't going to do it, and what effectively is needed is a coalition of politicians that effectively play the game at the beginning, and then just come out in one massive bang. Because, I mean, just one person, all that's going to happen is his funding is going to get removed. He's going to get hit with a scandal that's just going to happen near election time. They're going to remove him and replace him with somebody else.
Yeah.
George Galloway, I think the only reason why he can get away with something like that is because he's not of significance in the House of Commons, because he's part of his own party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't really care what he says, because everything I mean, honestly, how much influence does he actually have?
He only an activist movement, not outside mainstream media.
Do you not find the whole party politics is actually, you know, a contradictory term that, you know, serve the people before your party interests?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
give two hoots what your party wants. What do the people want?
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. If you look, the funniest example I think is, if you look at Obama's Twitter page and then you look at Cameron's Twitter page, I think it's a brilliant example because then, of course, their offices are completely different and whatnot. But if you look at Obama's Twitter page, he is the president of the United States first and foremost. There is the United States flag plastered everywhere. And yes, that is nationalism. But you look at Cameron's Twitter page, all you see in any social media that the Conservative Party have, or MPs have, or any MP from other parties, is their party propaganda first, then the country second.
Yeah.
And to me, that is an irrelevant example, but I think it counts for everything else.
Yeah, neither should have this patriotism has just gone too far, because it's gone past patriotism onto racism and fascism. And this is the thing. It's all right being proud of where you are and where you're born, but you don't own it. We don't own it. This isn't, our sort of. This isn't my country. This is just where I live. And I think people need to learn that they don't own nowhere. And I think that's where the politicians go wrong. Rather, first of all, they're going, right, we own this party that controls this island that we also own. Because they see in it as like a little stamp that they, and they make people think, well, you deserve this. You worked hard to build this. No, Britain's made up of many cultures that aren't British. There's probably no British left. And I don't understand why the whole propaganda of get the immigrants out. If we did that, there'd be nobody left. Because we're all immigrants. What was it? Was it the Anglo-Saxons and the none of us can stick a flag in the floor and claim, property to it. It's not our country. None of it's anyone's country.
Depends on how far back you want to go then, because where do you stop? Because the Romans were here before the Anglo-Saxons as well, so technically.
Yeah, I don't think you can put a line on it.
No, I don't think you can. But I think I think ownership is in a sense. You could actually see it as a positive thing, in the sense that, and I think that's the problem, because people they see, for example, that they own the Conservative Party, they're a part of this group, right? So they treat it as if that's their baby, that's the thing they want to grow.
Yeah.
And they obviously treat Britain as a way of financing that. That's why they do all the deals they do. That's why they promote companies, because the companies fund their party and therefore give them more money. If they instead saw themselves as being part of Britain, and more so, we could see it as actually, yes, Britain is of everybody, but we all own a piece of it, because if Britain, i.e. the land, goes down the tube and the whole world system collapses, what's going to happen if we continue the way we do, then all of existence will cease and it'll be nobody else but our own fault. So actually we do have a stake, and therefore we do have...
We do, as a whole.
We could feel the same way about this bit of land than we feel about, for example, North Korea or the land that's there.
If you've come from one of these countries and you've sought refuge in Britain, surely you'd understand that those people would be proud that they're there as well. So isn't it good that you've got other people from different countries supporting the country as well? In terms of, if I've come to this country and I've gone, oh my God, these people give me refuge, right? I would put my most in, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And I think if we gave them that leeway and stopped dragging them down and stopped claiming we were born here, it's ours. Well, how about if you live here, it's yours?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? No, we can't have that. It's Britain.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I completely agree with that. It is that issue of ownership. It is that issue of, we're British. We were always born here, even though, it depends on how far back you want to go and all the history behind it. But I don't think you even think that far back. I think people like UKip, for example, they take advantage of people's desperation. I think it's actually quite criminal what they're doing.
Yeah,
because they take advantage of... there are people in Britain, I don't think people understand, there are people in Britain that are on the brink of poverty. There are people here that are very incredibly angry with what's going on, incredibly annoyed, that want a change in society, and UKip effectively are taking, they're very, very well funded for one, so they're taking people that want change and are manipulating them into believing that racist drivel that they consistently keep spouting.
Piper of the vulnerable, UKip.
Yeah.
Yeah, racist Pied Piper.
But isn't it that we're always looking for something to blame, rather than taking you know, looking at everything as a whole and how we're all got our own crosses to bear in the things that we allow to go on. And to point the finger at any one person's race or ability it's just distractions from the real criminals, the real ones that are causing the damage. You know, I had this conversation with someone quite close to me, a relative actually. They'd been sharing stuff about the subway halal scandal, and we're getting to quite, you know, you've come to our country, you've got to put up with our ways, sort of things. And this is somebody who's gone to Spain, lived in a Spanish quarter, an English quarter in a Spanish place, and lives as if English in Spain, yet she's criticising people coming over to this country and practicing their religions. You know, it's a two-way street. Lots of people leave this country. Are you going to seriously tell me that you want all the immigrants out of here, and are you going to force all the people that have left this country back here?
Exactly, because we're on the top 10 list of immigrants out of the UK.
Expats. And, you know, and how would they feel being forced back? Because I tell you, if I had a country and my people weren't welcome in your country, people wouldn't be welcome in my country either. You know, if you're
childish.
Exactly what politics is.
That's how it would go.
It's all bartering, and it's all, you know, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. There would, no, a country is not going to want to lose the English revenue that it might generate, and we don't really want to lose the revenue that we generate. It's a two-way street, yeah. You know, and there is no border on this map that man hasn't made. You know, if you take it down to religion or spirituality or whatever, you know, everything belongs to Source, God, you know, the Creator, whatever you want to call him. Nothing belongs to me. We just all use a bit.
We should be a bit more.
Who's to say who's what bit?
Yeah, I mean, even if you are a believer or not of any religion, it really doesn't matter. But I think it's the whole point of we're all on this earth, and if you don't care about it because you're, you know, 60 or 70 and you think, well, it's not going to happen in my lifetime, well, it will happen in your kids' lifetime, and if not them in their kids' lifetime, surely you must have a feeling for them if you're human. Surely you must care what they think or what they're going to have to go through because of what your generation did.
To be honest, I don't feel that enough people believe what's actually happening is a problem. If I speak to people in the street, they just kind of like, yeah, you're a bit nuts. And I think, yeah, you need to think about the future a little bit. They're not on the ball at all. And this is the problem. They don't understand what's going on. They're not seeing what we're seeing in our circles. Because whether we like it or not, we're not hitting mainstream. We're only hitting a minority of people. And most of them are already activists. We're probably picking up a few along the way. And it is getting out there. But at the same time, it's not waking people up to a point where they're seeing what's actually happening, that we're being led into something we really don't want to be led into. In a way, you think about it, with the fluoride in the water, very Nazi Germany, UKip with Operation Paperclip, all these kind of things, Nazi Germany. If they had gone as far as what's happened in the world now, look globally, it's much worse than what happened with Hitler. There should be outcry. There should be uproar. There's no.
I think. I mean, frankly, I think you're 100% right. I don't think we are reaching the mainstream. I think that is a problem, and it seems like, again, if you look at the way things work, I mean, it's very sort of, you know, in the way that civil society, in a sense, you know, the media and so forth are always, you know, making people pay attention. Oh, look what Kim Kardashian's doing. You know, that's what's important. Look at this next trend. That's what's important. Forget about, you know, the transatlantic trade partnership. Forget about the fact that you're losing every single right your grandfathers ever fought for or whatever. Forget about the fact that your data is now being sold openly to companies. And also forget about the fact that all your NHS private data will be put on the market as well. Yeah. You've got to care about these celebrities. That's what's important. And they are making an amazing job at making people interested in the most benign, stupid things. I mean, you could just look at, you know, the channels that we have today, you know, BBC, Channel 4, well, Channel 4 is slightly better, I guess, but you got BBC and ITV that just spout shows that are complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah,
Which is,
there is no truth on the television whatsoever right now, unless what you could possibly go to RT, which will still have its own agenda. So we still have to be careful with the mainstream. The only thing we can do at this point is trust the people we've got, and they're just not hitting the big enough levels. You had Matey from is it Pie and Mash Films that sort of jumped in on the BBC, and these are the things that I think need to happen. If they're not going to broadcast it, we get it broadcast.
yeah, yeah,
Reasons that I really hope people will get behind the global funeral for democracy. I really hope that that is big. I really want people to come out for that, because I think got a good phrase on our blog at the moment. Democracy is dead. Welcome to corporate, and it is corporate democracy. That's what we're entering now. And I want people, because there's so many services that I really would like people to unite on this one. I'd like to see, about the death of the NHS. It's such a big thing that's coming up. I don't think people realise how close we're going to come to losing that service.
yeah, yeah. I mean, UKip, for example, when they privatise it, there's another sort of thing that people forget. But I mean, I think that's an incredible, the death of democracy. I think funeral is an amazing idea, and it seems so tragic to think that actually we are in square one again. Because if you think about the way things went, I mean, we fought for democracy, and when I say we as human beings, we fought for democracy to occur in the Western South, and we had it for a very, very short amount of time. Or some people argue we never had it. But we had the ability to vote and whatnot, and now we're losing it all because all the power has moved from government to corporations. Because government can't do anything unless the companies say it's okay.
Exactly.
Not directly say it's okay, but
they're being paid. Their government are merely administrators. If we're going to go that high, we could go up. We're probably best not naming names. I like my life.
Get dangerous there, but yeah.
Yeah. But these corporations, companies, crown commissioners, and all that, they all pay the government, and they pay them their loans to pay us our benefits and our things. So obviously they're going to have a massive say in it. It's no different from Wonga. They're all the same. They work exactly the same way. We're never going to pay off this debt because it doesn't actually exist. It's just we're just never going to pay it off, and that's what we're handing down to our kids.
It's the amount of corporate benefits we pay as well.
Yeah.
We pay tax credits for people working in Starbucks, and Starbucks don't pay their taxes. Because they pay a safe wage that they're without our help.
Haven't they decided to move to the UK?
Yeah. Too little. They might do. I think
they might do. They can't cope with it, with the pressure that we're putting on them now.
To be honest, too little. It's like I've said always, you stuff, they will bend over backwards to accommodate whatever you dictate, because they still want that money in your pocket, however they have to do it. They're whores for that money in your pocket. They bend over any which way they have to.
Yeah.
We can control that to a certain extent, but like with Starbucks, you want to go away and continue the boycott and stay strong against them. Yeah. Because they'll take a phenomenal amount out of the kids in their work programs and 0-hour contracts and things like that. They're still not acceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about corporations and so forth, you think, yes, I mean, they will indirectly pay the government and so forth, but I mean, it's still on politicians' heads, because they're the representatives that we put there to defend us against them.
Like a head teacher, if anything goes wrong with your school, they've got people starving, people who are being sanctioned, people who are dying, committing suicide. They've got all sorts on their plate right now, and they're not dealing with one bit of it. What would you do with a head teacher like that? You'd sack them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the thing about it is that corporations and businesses, they're just here to make money. They are a product of the capitalist system. They're just there to make money. They don't care how. So if governments, for example, suddenly said that, if the company started to employ issue green energy tactics and so forth, had no 0-hour contracts, and had their headquarters in the UK, and they said, oh, by the way, if you did all that, you get some deduction on your income tax. most companies will suddenly jump on it and start doing that, start paying people living wages rather than minimum wages or no or
Yeah.
0-hour contracts. They would start to promote green issues and so forth
The thing
because they're making more money doing it.
the system is fixable. It is fixable. It's just unobtainable right now. And I think that's the issue. If the right people were able to do certain things, the system is fixable. I don't think the politician situation will work. The way that the way voting process and stuff like that works. And I think the monetary system's broken and beyond repair. Those two things, I think they have to be reset and applied in a different way, a new constitutional setup and all sorts. But it is fixable. We're just not allowed to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I just wondered, I mean, if you think about the monetary system is way off. I mean, that's got so many issues. You could debate about it for.
And who doesn't know about
pretty
it?
much.
That's the worst part. Everyone knows it.
I mean, everyone knows, but then they say positive debt. What the hell does that mean? What the hell does positive
Like
debt
civil
mean?
war. It's a fake name. There is no
Yeah.
civil war. There's no positive debt.
I mean,
War of debt.
so if I have this, I mean, if I went to a bank, for example, that I had a mortgage that I couldn't pay, and said, well, it's positive debt, so I can help. They're just gonna look at you, think, the hell are you talking about?
So positive, honestly. I think they use these words though because for ages I got baffled. I think P put a post up the other day to explain things like they name third world. What the hell is first world and second world and fourth world? That kind of thing. They put these things in to make us not understand stuff. And civil war is just one of those things. It's one of those things where we're going to call it civil war so we can rape and pillage that village, and you're not going to know nothing about it or do anything about it because it's civil. And it's the same as debt. They're just going to totally bleed us dry of money and no one's going to do anything because it's positive debt.
On the banking crisis, right, and we would bail out the banks, I do not get why we didn't bail out people. The same amount of money that they would give to the banks, if they took give this to people with debts over blah, 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 to clear their debt, they'd have gone to the bank, paid it into the bank, and still saved the bloody bank because their bank would have got the money, but because the people's debts would have been written off.
Mm.
Yeah, instead of giving them something out of a loan, because that's just a lot more money that someone's going to have to pay back at some point. I say someone down the line's going to have to eventually do it.
Yeah, our kids, our future.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, for example, when I remember when the whole tuition fee rise was going, I was still in A levels, and I remember when they were sort of talking, oh, but you don't have to pay it back till you earn a certain amount. And it's like, yes, you do. If it's not going to be paying it back as a loan, you have to pay it back in tax because they're going to need to get the money somewhere, somehow.
It's my daughter. She turned around and she was like, I'm going to uni. I was like, that half and half feeling. That's really good that you've achieved so much, but fuck, you've already earned yourself debt. You go and you just, it's debt. I'm really glad. I'm proud of her, so proud of her. But the thought of what she's got to owe just to get that education. And someone even had the gall to turn around to me earlier today and say, oh, yeah, well, the state pays for education. Does it really? It pays for basics. It pays for a product line engineering of children who they want an outcome of. It doesn't pay for education.
No, I mean, that's the whole point.
Anymore.
Education is about opening people's minds. This is indoctrination at its best. It's the manipulation of young kids to become the labor force that they're going to need or whatever. It's not. I wouldn't say it's anything else than that. I mean, they're doing it for their own means. Yeah. It's
product line teaching.
It's the same way that Apple, for example, pays to have their iPhones made. Or the same way that another company does anything else, or McDonald's makes burgers. It's not. We're being made into what they need, effectively. They need people that speak English and basic other skills to become whatever they need. If they didn't need us to do that, they wouldn't offer free education, as they say it.
Yeah, exactly. Free is merely there to control us and create what they want. They're not going to make adjustments. I always read that you need to adapt an environment to get a child to learn accordingly. Right, that's not happening. They're integrating children into schools. That's great. That means what you're doing is forcing children to adapt into a nature and an environment that's not suitable for them, hoping for the best, and you're needling them out at 3 or 4. They're trying to do it at 2 now. We're going to wheedle all the good ones out, and then the other ones, they can just bugger off and do some kind of apprenticeship somewhere. That's
No,
all
no.
for me.
Take that back. That of 2, they want poor people's children to start school at school. In fact, the MP's requests were not to start school. It was to start their careers.
Career, yeah, their career, yeah, I forgot that bit. Yeah, sorry.
And people with money.
Yeah, let's get them into McDonald's quickly. So
Poor.
they can pay for my Ian Duncan Smith's underpants.
My daughter, you know, she's going to this year, and I was like, it's a lot of debt. She's like, well, you don't have to pay it back till you're earning X amount.
That's what mine said.
I said, yeah, but you know, in a few years' time, a Mac job's going to be paying X amount. You're going to be struggling to pay that debt, and your living costs that have gone up. You know, it seems like a lot of money now, but you know, if you paid a going salary now, 20, it'd have been a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? So,
well, then it's a matter of survival, though, as well, because I mean, yes, it's a huge amount of debt, but it's also a gamble, because if you don't go to, I mean, soon you're going to need a degree from a university to work in McDonald's. It's going to get to the point where you're going to need a degree.
Have you noticed all those jobs like window cleaners and car washers and that? They used to be £5 jobs where kids could go out and earn a little bit of money and get themselves going.
They need
They're
a bloody
now proper
qualification.
jobs. We've got no backup jobs anymore, apart from paper round, and I have noticed a few adults doing it.
I right, go out and wash some cars, because that's what I used to do. I used to know how to make money, and I've tried telling my kids how to do it when they want a bit of extra money. And do you know what? They got into trouble for going out asking cars to be washed because they didn't have a license.
I got in trouble for that when I was a kid. I still remember that.
Yeah, so they're not allowed to earn money. They're being removed from their dens because they're not allowed to damage property by making dens in woods. We're totally allowing them to destroy our kids' childhood. Who's going to stop them?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, you don't know what kind of damage this is doing to kids, because I mean the whole point of being a kid, the whole point of being human and young is to be able to, I don't know, climb up a tree or do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if you want to make a little bit of money extra to supplement whatever you're trying to do as a kid, you should be able to go and wash your neighbor's car or whatever, or run a paper. I mean that's just it's just basic. It's just basic things that you should be able to do in a society that your parents pay taxes for.
But they've changed the society.
It's also the destruction of community. Like when I was a child, I used to go out with the bin lid and clear up all the litter off the green. And in the winter, we'd go and sweep the snow from the old peoples. And we always talked to these people that we were doing these little jobs for, and we'd get £1 or 50p here and there. We wouldn't necessarily be doing it for the money, to be honest. Like it weren't like, I'll do this, you pay me. Sometimes they give it us for doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that's gone. It's because we're not out interacting with our community. Hang on.
But yeah, no, I think she's 100% right. I mean, it is about, you know, connecting with communities and so on. I think this whole idea is that we're isolating ourselves from everything, and it seems so tragic because people are just not connecting with each other anymore. They're living an independent life, and this whole, I think, is the biggest capitalist liberal lie, is the idea that, you know, you as an individual can do anything and are effectively an independent individual that should be able to strive and do anything you want in this world. You're not an individual. You are part of a community. The community that you have around you helps you whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And as an individual, you can accomplish very, very little because, I mean, in human history, we've always been a community. It's only up until this society that we've sort of had this idea that as an individual we can accomplish these grand feats, when actually it's because people were around you that you've managed to achieve what you've managed to achieve, and you're helping someone else achieve what they wanted to achieve.
Have you noticed
interconnectivity?
Lately, you used to have the time where you could knock on an older person's door, and your mum would send you around, and you'd be like, can you check that person? It's like, oh. But that was how it was. You kind of made sure they were all right. If they had letters under their doorway, then you knocked, and then you called somebody if you couldn't get hold of them. If you didn't see someone for a couple of days, you'd check on them. Now they're asking you to report your neighbour or try and wake them up to make sure they get their kids to school. And it's like, hang on a minute, you've turned society into little grassers, so nobody trusts anyone anymore. An old person these days isn't going to open the door to some young youth anywhere, because they're all, you know, it's dangerous, it's not good, don't let them into your home, don't speak to strangers.
Well, that's the like, I mean, the hatred that they have among young people in the media as well is horrendous. I mean, it's like, nobody opens their doors anymore because they think they're going to grasp them up to the authorities because, oh, you're going to do this. And now, as is with young people, nobody opens the doors to young people. They all look at them badly because all you hear in the media is gangs, stabbings, and whatnot.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like during the London riots. I remember, and we, as an organisation, we actually did a lot of work in after the aftermath of that. And all we saw was, I mean, we asked young people in general, you know, what was the average age of people in the London riots? And almost every single one always said 15 to 17 or 18-year-olds. And the reality was that most people in the London riots were 27 years of age.
Wasn't it a very mixed, diverse crowd?
The average age on police records was 27 years of age.
By the time it had worked its way down to my area of the UK, it was a bunch of chavs rioting and looting. So the Chinese whispers and the media had got to a point where there was no age. It was just a bunch of chavs who weren't happy with life. I mean, there was no reason. There was no talk on why it happened, where it happened, how it happened. Just a bunch of youthless chavs running around wrecking people's houses, and it's like, yeah, because they did that for no reason at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole thing about it was that the way they were saying and manipulating it down our end. I'm in London, so it was, you know, down there, and it was just, they were just talking about it as if it was just a load of young people that were opportunistically, you know, going around looting places.
Yeah, that's the kind of.
It's like, no, it's because the police shot a man and then tried to frame him.
Yeah.
The police shot an unarmed human being and then tried to plant a gun on him. These are the people that are supposedly looking after us.
Yeah, no. The days of trusting police are long gone.
What?
I think
Look at the riots and how many kids, like that student who picked up a bottle of water, and how long did he get in prison? You know, you've got bankers that have stolen billions, and you've got a student that picked up a bottle of water at the riots that's come for some shop, and he goes to prison for it. Another kid who he tweeted something like, oh, the riot's coming to him, or let's start a riot here. And
yeah, the BlackBerry guy.
Yeah, there wasn't a riot there. There wasn't any trouble there. It was a tweet. A stupid kid sending a silly little tweet. And he went to prison for that. Yeah, we've had people that have claimed ridiculous expenses, fraudulently robbed the taxpayers. And to me, a position of trust holds more of a...
We can't forget the fact of Tony Blair and the fact that we've made an illegal war.
Yeah. I mean, we've destroyed two countries. I mean, we've absolutely annihilated the living standards of those two countries.
But we're fine. It's all right. We've got a few lunatics running around the streets.
You know, I mean, I don't know if you saw, because Bush was also war criminal, frankly. But it was so funny when he came. I don't know if you saw when he went on not a state visit, an official visit to Switzerland. And he had to take the plane early because the Swiss had had given him an arrest warrant, have issued an arrest warrant for crimes.
Arrest warrant.
Huh?
I think most of the elite MPs, royal family, blah blah blah, they're all under an arrest warrant. Most of them.
Really?
Silence. I believe so.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
do.
God.
They've all got something on their head, and some countries doing them for this and that, but they have done an illegal war. That's what's happened, and they're going to want retribution for that. But they're going around and they're like, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's like, no, Tony Blair, you are going to be arrested eventually. You can't run around pillaging illegal wars and not have something happen. And that's just,
I don't think something's going to happen to him. I honestly
No, I
don't think
don't.
anything's going to happen.
None of
Yeah,
them.
no, none of them. It doesn't matter what group set up what arrest warrants or things like that. You're never going to arrest them. You're never going to get them in court because they're not designed for that. They made these systems
Yeah.
to protect themselves.
Yeah. There's just so many now that they'd have to arrest them all.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh well, you. It's not going to happen.
Well, it's not a negative thing, really, if that did happen. But yeah, no, speaking realistically, that would never happen.
I'd love that to happen, but it's not going to happen.
I mean, the fact is that, I mean, Britain and America, you know, I mean, the West effectively run the world and run society in the way it is. And up until those systems stay in place, these people are going to remain at large, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
You know, and just talking about, again, you know, going back to the elections and UKip and so forth. I mean, it seems so convenient that, you know, the media and so forth are trying absolutely everything to keep the transatlantic trade partnership out of people's attentions.
Yeah, that's going to kill us. That is going to be our downfall. I think it's going to completely ruin our freedom in any way, and we're going to be left with nothing to sell. Nothing. I feel that Britain is going to become almost like Thailand, where all we're going to have left to sell personally is going to be drugs, which is funded by them anyway, sex, and stolen goods. That's all we're going to have left, and that's kind of what they want the poor to live on. They don't want to fund us. That's not what they want to do anyway, and that is what they're going to turn Britain into if that goes through.
But do you not think that people are getting more self-reliant?
Oh yeah.
Away from the because that's got to be the key, hasn't it? Getting a bit more independence back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they are. Have you ever heard of the tiny house movement? Tiny House Europe.
Yeah.
We're going to be interviewing them a little bit, and they sound fascinating because, I mean, they're selling small tiny houses for, I can't remember how much it was, but it was a ridiculously low amount.
Yeah.
And it's just giving people an option to effectively, you know, say, well, screw you, banks. I'm not going to get a huge loan that's going to keep me indebted for the rest of my life and keep me in what is effectively called debt bondage. I'm going to go out and do whatever I want.
And then really, I look at people who bought their houses and they work hard and they think they're doing the right thing. But then I look at the likes of the fracking, where you've got like the Queen and the Church claiming their land into people's houses so that they can just frack underneath it. And then there's like places where they've got these licenses. Insurance companies aren't insuring the houses against any damage from fracking. You know, how much do you actually own when you get a mortgage? Because it seems to me that, like with the the HS2, whatever it's called, the train, they can just knock down your house, do what the hell they want. They can put a train next to it, and it's up to them whether they compensate you for it. Because not everybody's going to be compensated well for that.
And if you own the property, to be honest, by the time you get too old, you've got to sell the property to pay for your care.
Yeah. I think
straight back into the system.
I think what people need to, I think what people are slowly starting to understand and starting to realize is that the people that we always entrusted in our care and our society and the taking care of this society are actually completely and utterly against us. You know, it's not us working with them.
It's not funny, really, but you have to laugh.
Well, if you don't laugh, you cry, probably. You know, it's one of those kind of situations where if you don't laugh, you cry. I think people are starting to realize that actually, you know what, these politicians aren't for me. They are for the corporations. They are for other things. And if they need to trample on you to go and get something, to go and get a resource, then they will do that. They're not there for you as an individual. They're there for the people that pay them, which are the corporations.
Yeah. But I think people have done have been misguided to a point where they're like, I think everybody knows there's something wrong. And I think what's happened is, whoa, UKip, they're new, they're fresh, they're totally uneducated. We're going to go for them.
They're perfect.
Yeah, we're going to go for them because they're not like politicians. What they don't realise is they're worse, and they're like Tories in disguise with a bit of nastiness all rubbed in.
Well, the Tories sound bearable compared to them.
I know. I'm worried. I'm worried for the future.
Oh, I thought I'd never say that.
Tories in corduroys.
Yeah. Oh dear God.
We think the women's right that is we're taking it back in time. Women are going to lose so many rights just by being part of UKip.
I mean, if you look at, for example, Romney and the elections in America, before I mean, it was neck and neck at one point. You're thinking, how is this guy actually getting votes? And it was only up until he offended every single every single black and Hispanic and every woman in America that people actually woke up and said, you know what, maybe the voting for this person is not the right way to go. But it was only until he started shooting himself in the foot and the rest of the Republican Party
I reckon in the UK, they're not even going to wake up until they start shooting people. Because
that's already happened.
So far... Oh, exactly, yeah. Well,
I mean,
they still got away with it.
Let's go back to that, like, these heavy stops that they do. You know, what the fuck? The Mendez or whatever, I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
You know, he's going on the train, they've got the wrong person, they shoot him dead. You know, you've got the marks of there was somebody else up in Manchester that they hard stopped and killed. You know, what's this shoot before you actually know? Since when did a person in the police force become judge and juror?
Yeah.
You know, that minute you're making that decision that's going to take a life away from someone without, you know, enough bureaucracy and paperwork to stop you from doing that. No, they don't even care about wrongful suits now. They don't even care about the Police Complaints Commission or anything like that because nothing is ever done. No one is ever found guilty.
They're protected to a certain point. What they don't realise is they're going to slowly be eked out the system just like we are and replaced by people like G4S, which are, Blackwater almost?
Yeah, they're the British version. I mean, Blackwater, for instance, take over already most of they did up until all the scandals. I don't know who's on there now. But I mean, they're pretty much doing the same thing in Afghanistan and Iraq and stuff, of replacing the armies. I mean, I remember there was a really, really good short film that I saw a while ago where effectively they saw capitalism at its height, where you saw policemen being owned by private companies, and the police would walk past people getting mugged because those people couldn't afford insurance.
Yeah.
So they said there's nothing we can do because you don't have police insurance, and some people that have gold, for example, insurance get help straight away and whatnot.
Yeah.
And why? People say, oh, well, that never happens. And then you got to ask yourself, well,
NHS
why?
is happening.
Yeah, I mean, why? I mean,
like a vet to the point where at the minute, old people. It's all right. They're not going to put into society. We'll just have to refuse them medication now because it's not effective. That's like a vet. That's like taking your dog to a vet and them saying it's not really worth it. Just put it down. And that is how our society is going. Because what's going to happen when a family loses a job, lose their insurance because the NHS is being privatised? That is just going to happen. When it's privatised, it ain't going to be free. And we're going to have to do insurance. So if you haven't got that insurance at time, how are people going to feel when their kids start dying of leukemia and they can't pay for it?
Yeah, I mean, look at America. Surely we have an example into what we don't want to become. We have across the water, you have this country where if you break your leg, you're going to put your family into bankruptcy because of that medical bill.
Yeah.
If your kid jumps out of a tree and breaks his arm, that's your family losing their home because they can't pay their medical bill.
Yeah.
That's not a society you'd want to live in. We in this country, for the moment anyway, have the ability that if we hurt ourselves, we can at least go and see a doctor. Yeah. We at least have that right.
But the GPs have refused to do fees, so at least we do have one sort of on our side in a kind of way. They have refused, which is good.
I mean, if you look at the American healthcare system, look at how much they pay for the same things.
Yeah.
Because
$174,000 bill by the time it got out. How
say like aspirin is 30p here. In America, they pay about $8 for it. You know, I'm not. That's just plucking figures. I'm just saying that's the individual drug price is phenomenal over there because when you talk about holding health, people will pay anything.
Yeah,
the same drugs available in this country are a damn sight cheaper under the NHS than they ever would be under any private healthcare.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And to be honest,
100%.
we still pay a very high price for our drugs because whether or not seeing the GP is free, sometimes you sit there and think, yeah, I think I'll go buy that over the counter because prescriptions are really expensive.
Yeah,
They're getting quite expensive now, and I always think, is it worth it? Are you sure? Because
yeah.
I'm not paying that. You know, but things like antibiotics, not that I agree with them because half of them kill you, but things like antibiotics, you're paying the price to have them, but you can't live without them. If it's got to that point where you get an infection or something, you have to pay that whether you like it or not. So we're still already got a noose around our neck. They're just pulling it tighter
And
by
that's the problem. And
And
that's
if
the problem with care data. I mean, the point about it is that, remember when we were campaigning about it, we were sort of saying, well, people were saying, well, what matters if, how does it matter if, companies know what my medical history is? Well, it does matter because if they suddenly get hold of all British people's medical history, then they will know what kind of illnesses we've suffered from, what's the demographic, what
they're
kind of
going to
drugs
find
we
a
use.
high rise in melatonin for
they will
children
have
suffering
to
Yeah, I
no,
mean, like in America, for instance, they have a high rise in people suffering from suffering
autism.
from hay fever and autism. But if you look at hay fever, for example, an inhaler in this country costs about £3 or something like that, and an inhaler in America costs about $307.
Yeah, yeah.
That is an incredibly high figure. That is an incredibly high figure, and that's what's going to happen if care data comes in, is that all you're going to see is a massive rise in things because they're going to know that British people need these kind of drugs because otherwise a lot of them are going to die. Therefore, we can just raise the price higher and higher.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what you're going to have to do, but you're going to have to cough up the money somehow.
yeah, exactly. And that's the problem. Who's going to cough up the money? It's us. So there's nothing we can sort of do about it. In terms of that, we're always just going to be paying for what we've got, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Pharmaceutical companies are always just going to rip us off because that's what you look at it with the cancer patent, chemo, things like that. They're never going to change it because it's billions of dollars worth of an industry. Same with autism. That's going to be that's a massive, amount of money they're earning off of things like that. ADHD, Ritalin. They don't want to cure us because they earn so much money out of us.
yeah,
Why not curing us?
I think if they do start charging for appointments and if it does become privatised, I think a lot of people are going to be turning back to older medicines.
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, like herbal medicines and so on are probably going to become a big thing.
I'm just going to go get a shaman.
Pharmaceuticals do use herbs, they just do stuff to them to make them more concentrated. And I think that you'll probably get a lot of people that will go back to trying their own remedies a bit first before they bother the doctor because it's going to be costly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
Maybe that won't be such a bad thing after all then.
No.
well, it depends because some people might need help and they might not get the help because they'll be worried about how much it's going to cost them.
Well, some people might not be able to afford it, full stop. I mean, that is the way that, I mean, America, for example, there are a lot of people that just can't afford it.
Yeah.
Say with benefit cut-offs and with NHS cut-offs, even though the majority can make themselves self-sufficient in both ways, there's still going to be a large number of people that are dependent on it that can't not, that are going to need help. It's the same with, like, obviously with long-term terminal illnesses and things like that. There's no escaping the fact that they're going to need things and things that, what if they can't pay for it? They just don't get it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the whole thing about the healthcare and stuff. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that it shouldn't be privatized, and then you just sort of think that everything's obviously. I mean, it all goes back to money and stuff, as you said. It's rather to sustain a cancer and to keep it where it is because it costs more money as opposed to actually healing it. You got to think, well, how would a moneyless society actually look like?
Yeah.
And you got to think that people would be cured. Cures would actually be looking. I mean, first of all, the banking industry would disappear because money would disappear, and that is no bad thing for anybody.
That'd be lovely.
Then you'd have obviously the healthcare industry, which would be booming with cures for every sort of disease, because that's the way people would be going down. Because sustaining the cancer is not going to be a priority anymore because they don't need the money because money doesn't exist. And I mean, you know, when people turn around and say, well, how can you have a moneyless society and all that stuff? I mean, it wouldn't work. People would stop working and so forth. I don't think that's true. I think people would still work. They'll just do their hobby rather than
Yeah,
what?
I don't think people put enough faith in humanity.
I don't think so either, because for example, I mean, I've always used the example of like, you know, fashion designers and so forth. Imagine like we've always got, I mean, if you look at the clothing, it's always the same old stuff, and then you got people that want to be in, you know, want to be in fashion and want to do things, but they do it for as a hobby because they can't get into it because it's such a cutthroat industry. Could you imagine all those people suddenly going in to those industries? There'll be huge amounts of different fashion items, huge amount of different cars that would look strange and weird types. There'll be different foods out there. I mean, I don't know. To me, it would just seem like society would boom rather than diminish.
I think that the great thing about it would give everybody the opportunity to follow
their dreams.
And when you're working for something that you're passionate about, you always give a lot more. You know, you're more valued in your job. You're going to give a lot more. You're going to get better ideas. You're going to feed off each other and grow faster. Because how many great scientists are growing up in Africa that will never have the chance to be educated and to bring the great discoveries that they could because they're never going to get the opportunity.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, to give everybody the opportunity and to let everybody's ideas be heard without the thought of how much profit it's going to cost.
Or the actual money needed to actually launch yourself in the beginning. Because you need money to make money. That's the sad part of it. You can't make money out of nothing.
This is what me and Kiki say. We say, you know, it is insane that we dream of winning the lottery so we can become self-reliant. You know, so we can have a bit of land, build our own little shack, and just live. You know, because
it costs too much. We can't do it.
Us ever owning land is quite unreachable. You know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the whole thing with the Dale Farm thing was talk about owning land. You know, that was a tragedy. That one.
Where's that? What was
You know the Dale Farm thing, the traveller community that got kicked off.
Oh yeah, that was horrific. That was
a huge. It was basically like a little war going on. I mean, and what was sad is that they owned half that land.
Yeah.
I don't know how the legalities got around it, but
Some
the
of the kids
travellers owned it.
sat there watching their homes being destroyed.
Yeah, and they went in like an army.
Yeah.
And you sort of think these are the people that are supposed to protect you.
Eventually.
And I have to take this back to the law of the land. Surely, like they have a preserved way of life. We've taken away their right to roam everywhere. You know, they get moved on all the time. But they have a right to existence and their way of life. I'm sure that that's protected by law somewhere. So, you know, the fact that they even owned the land as well. And then it was pure snobbery on that bloke's part, weren't it? At the end of his fence, he didn't like the look of it. You know, why is one man's opinion worth more than however many families were living there?
Well, it's like that lady said earlier when I said people should learn to share, and she's like, and I said, oh, spread the wealth, and she was instantly like, well, I don't think you will be better off if you don't. And I'm thinking, why are you thinking of yourself? Does it matter if we're going to lose out a bit? Is that what people are so scared of? That's what makes me wonder whether more people are actually understanding what's going on, but they don't want to change it because they're scared of what they're going to lose.
I think it's fair. I would tend to agree with that people are. I mean, you know, I think people are in tantamount a little bit. You can call it a little bit selfish and so forth, and a little bit scared. I mean, the fact is that, you know, we can sit here and argue that it's the government and it's the corporations, and in a sense it is them, but you got to kind of think and then look at yourself in the mirror and think, this is because of us. This has happened because of us. You know, there is nobody else in society you can blame more so than yourself.
Who else is buying SodaStream? Who else is buying Coca-Cola? Who's buying Nestle? We're purchasing these things. If we didn't purchase them and didn't profit them, clothes, Primark, those things that, you know, everybody knew about Primark. Everybody.
But everybody goes and buys it. I mean, the same with, for example, politics. I mean, you know.
When I walk past, I'm like, oh, I could love that. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
I mean, you could, for example, I mean, we had the elections, you know, the local elections as well yesterday, just to bring it back to that. And in my constituency where I live, Labour Party won back most of its seats, and you sort of think the Labour Party is the reason. I mean, it's part of the system, and you're sort of. And I mean, all these people. I mean, if you played that at their own game and all the people suddenly voted for an independent to come to power, there's nothing they can do but allow that independent to come to power as an MP.
Exactly.
So we actually have an immense amount of power in this country to effectively vote for whoever we want. So even though we live in a dictatorship in the sense that only Ed Miliband and David Cameron can become elected, that's because we believe that there are only two choices. When actually I could, for example, stand as an MP, you could stand as an MP, anybody else could stand as an MP.
Yeah.
And if people voted for you as opposed to the standard Conservative or Labour thief or whatever you want to call them.
It's such a ball ache though, because it's so tied up in red tape. You've got, if I want to stand as an independent,
Carry on.
If I want to stand as an independent, I have to abide by the rules, and I don't know all the rules like the Conservative and things do because they've been doing it for years, and I haven't got the funding that they've got to promote myself the way that they can. So I'm pretty much out of the picture right from the start.
It doesn't give you that opportunity because what they do is they say, yeah, here's your little doorway, walk through it. You ain't got no money, you ain't got no chance. Because they've changed that. Wasn't that the gagging law that they changed that? The smaller.
You can only spend so much. So if the government.
Yeah. So even if you do find the money, it's once again limited.
Yeah. And like, say if I stood as an MP and I want to do leaflets and I stick leaflets out, now I've got to start putting things on there that says who's printing the leaflets and who's paying for it, and that just make sure I'm not being funded by anyone, which I understand that you've got to keep a trail for all the money. It starts becoming very complicated and hard for just somebody trying to promote themselves because they don't know all these legislations, and before they know it, they're in trouble. The Conservatives and the Labour are ringing up the Electoral Commission or whatever, complaining about them and trying to get them struck off. So it's possible, it's costly, and it's not really. A candidate shouldn't really be based on whether he can afford to stand. It should be down to...
It's not obtainable to people who don't have wealth. Not really. It's almost like Formula One racing. You only get the chance to do it if you've got rich parents.
Yeah.
Because you have to be plucked from a very select fruit. You look at our politicians, they all went to the same school. They all went to the same college. They all went to the same university. That kind of thing. They all follow the same line. They would never allow somebody, because I know they say it's free, it's not free. They would never allow somebody to run who hadn't gone through the process that they've been through. They just wouldn't. They need to keep this process in, because once they've turned their backs, the public are going to be rife with it. They know it. They have to be on the ball all the time. They have to keep their finger on the button constantly. Can't allow some hippie in. Go run the country.
Right.
What would happen then?
And things like that.
But too much power.
But the other problem you've got with that is the constant brainwashing that that it is only between X and X, and even like the Greens and things like that, they come under other, like insignificant.
Yeah, we don't care about them. There's no point voting them. You won't be able to put this or that, or they won't get enough votes. It's just a wasted vote. You might as well vote for the top two. That's the way it works.
Like Labour will be saying, oh, if you don't vote for Labour, you're Tory enablers.
Yeah.
It should never be about who you don't want to be in power. It should always be about who is good enough for your vote. And if there is no one good enough, then you shouldn't cast your vote under peer pressure because you might be enabling another party. In fact, none of you should be voting for any of them. You should be telling them to pull their socks up, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. We shouldn't be humouring. It's almost like we're humouring them.
We're consenting. When we go to that poll and we put our X on there, it's given the delusion of choice, and there is no choice.
No.
Because the bosses are all the same. When I vote, I don't vote for ShoutoutUK.
No.
And no one voted for this government. It's like the elections today, right? the seat, the person who won the seat got 600 and something votes in my area. 600, only needed 650 people to say that he was good enough, right? But probably 1,500 people said that he weren't.
Yeah.
Didn't vote for him, they voted for someone else.
Yeah.
So it's not who's the best, it's who the most people liked, but just because 600 people liked him, 1,500 people didn't. More didn't than did.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is the problem. Sorry, I'm just trying to invite Matteo back in.
You can't invite him back in, he needs to just join back in. Because he's
Oh.
Here he is.
Is he back in?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
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 Hello, yeah, my laptop died.
Lost you a while there. We carried on.
MPs, and I was saying that when you do stand as an independent, it gets very costly with all the like promoting yourself. You haven't got the funds that they've got, and there's all these little rules, and you don't know them, so they complain a lot to the Electoral Commission and try and get you into trouble. Like if you print your own leaflets, you can't put things on the back to say who's paid for it. Leave the money trail for the money. It gets very complicated for people that aren't in that.
But I mean, there is a way, though. I mean, the point is that, yes, it's very complicated, but it all depends on how much you want to change things then. Because if one says, okay, fine, it's too complicated, I'm not going to do it, or because it's costly, I mean, I think that the internet has been such a massive blessing for things like this. I don't think we're taking advantage of it as much as we can with playing the game as we've said, because you have the possibility of raising funds and so forth yourself through these sites and so on. And I think that there is so much possibility now with all of that we can.
Wave of Action.
Go on.
Through Wave of Action, we thought about crowdfunding, but the thing that we found is that as soon as money becomes involved, the fingers start pointing, and I understand that there's a lot of plans going on and not all of them are great, but I get pretty sick of activists constantly pointing the finger at other activists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when funding comes in. Yes, there is issues.
We're trying to avoid that. That is something we're trying to avoid, because money is a dirty little trap. And if we can encourage people, if we're supposed to be encouraging people that you can do things without money, then surely we can do this without money.
I mean, the thing about it is that Wave of Action can operate without money and so forth in that extent. But I was saying, if you're gonna go into election, as we were talking about, because you are gonna be playing on their field as such, you can't do it without money. It's almost like playing their own game without their means.
But then that already excludes people in poverty from going, or people who don't have contacts, but maybe in that position where they can change things.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like it's such a hard thing to say and thing to go into, really, because if you think about it, we have the possibility and we don't have the possibility, because we have it because we physically can do it, but we don't have it because the economics just doesn't add up. People just don't have the money to throw. Because as an MP, you got to sign up and you got to pay £500, which is okay for a party, but can anybody else?
It's a bit like I was just saying before. It's a bit like Formula One driving. You got to have a rich daddy, really, to get started. You do. You have to come from. If you didn't go to Eton with them and you didn't do what they do and run that line, you've got a hell of a battle to get to the top.
Yeah.
Because you've got media as well. Media's not going to support you.
These people are groomed into. I mean, I think the best example of it is Gramsci, and it's like with the way that Italian socialist, and what he was saying is that, I mean, the problem is that in Western civilization you're never going to get a revolution like you had in, for example, Russia. It's never going to happen, simply because you have civil society that defends the political society. Like the media, the unions, to an extent. Then you got schools and all sorts that effectively teach people to act one way. And what he was saying, which I think he's 100% create a parallel civil society, parallel media, like Occupy Times, for instance, a parallel schooling system teaching people about different things, different ways of life. And bringing more people into that kind of civil society will eventually change the political society, because eventually what the aim would be is to, if civil society did change or create a parallel, more people would be reading the alternative newspapers as opposed to the mainstream media. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the mainstream media pick up on it or not.
Yeah, I think media is a massive factor that needs taken out of the equation.
Definitely. I mean, it's a huge issue. Huge issue.
Yeah.
I think that's what Wave of Action wants to strive to achieve is, take more responsibility on our personal actions and change what we can and look for alternative ways. We plant things. If we do each little act that takes us out of the system, because I think that's how you'll win it, is when you see non-comply. Non-compliance is the way we'll win it. And that's little actions in our day-to-day, like do what we can for ourselves, but worked the ground so many hours to have the time. Society is pretty much set up to trap you not to have time to spend in the system or complying with it.
Yeah. Well, listen, by the way, I've got to head off now, but
We're gonna too.
it was great. It was great speaking to you again, and try and make this a regular if we can.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great.
Discuss more important topics that are dragging the UK under.
Yeah. And more about the UKip.
Yes.
I love talking bad